at the end of the day, you chose to have a baby. You shouldn't have it for somebody else. That's number one.
Absolutely.
Number two, nobody goes in thinking they're going to be a single parent, even if you're not married. Morning, guys. Happy Friday to you, man. We've done this every single day for the whole week.
I know.
But cracking early in the morning.
Yeah.
And I have two stories for you that I want to talk about. One we haven't talked about yet, and we could get really into it, but we're going to get real into it because we're both moms. The second one is an update on a story that we have been following pretty closely. And
is it about Tay and Travis?
Nope.
It's not been confirmed. P.S. Peeps.
Okay.
Tay and Travis has now been confirmed. It's funny. I was telling my boo this last night, and he was like, "So cute. You think I care?"
Oh, you do. We do. Everybody does. We want her to be happy.
Yes, we do.
We want her to be happy. And he seems like a good guy. He seems like he has a good sense of humor and all that.
I guess we'll know because the music will reflect it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but if they have a tumultuous relationship and it gets all crazy, then we'll hear about that in her next album.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What are you talking about?
Okay. Well, I wanted to give you an update on Joe Jonas and Sophia Turner.
Ooh.
Things got so much messier. It was already messy, okay? But it was reported this morning that she was blindsided by the divorce. She didn't know about it until he did it, and it was in the media. So that's number one, accusation number one.
I have questions. Why do men keep doing this?
We don't know if it's true or not because he clapped back and said that she knew it was going to happen. They had conversations. He filed it in Florida. And you know what? How she didn't know, because we knew. We were talking about it. She was out with Tay the other day, last week. Anyway, so I guess she went out in New York City. She's still in New York City. She probably has a home here. I think she does. She went out last night. And would you know that she's claiming that Joe is wrongfully retaining her children?
Yeah.
That he's supposed to let her children visit her because her residence is England or whatever. And he filed it in Florida. And according to the documents, he's supposed to let them go, but she's saying that he's withholding their passports. I'm not surprised by this. Also, how is he doing all this stuff when he's on tour?
He's at home now, apparently, isn't he? Doesn't it say somewhere that he's at home? Didn't I hear?
Yeah, I guess so. But basically,
I guess the best thing to do would be to check dates. So where he might be.
Listen, I'm not their keeper, okay? But
he's detaining their children and they can't leave the United States and go visit their mom, who is now in the UK. I thought she was in New York City.
She's in New York, but I guess while this is happening, they can't come. Like, she's saying that's what he's doing. And he's saying these claims are misleading. So it just is really messy. These kids are young. They're like 3 years old and under 1. So I hope for the sake of this entire family that this stuff gets settled sooner rather than later, because this 3-year-old will not remember any of this until they look it up online. But I hope that we
live in a world that's digital and
listen,
written in
if
ink.
These parents don't figure it out, this can drag on. Look how long Brad and Angelina dragged on for. I think it's still not done. I think it's still not done. And their kids are older. But think about who's going to suffer here. It's not the parents. You're not even fighting about money because you have an ironclad prenup.
You know what they're fighting about, though, Meera.
What?
This is about power.
Of course it is.
And children are just a pawn in their disgusting game.
But it's like, who hurt who? And I want to hurt you even more. Yeah. It's just really disgusting. And I hope that Sophie figures it out with Joe. That's all. And Joe figures it out with her. Because at the end of the day, they just have Sophie. She wants to do her thing. But at the end of the day, even if she goes out every single night, she's still their mother. And that's not your call. And you can't have full custody because she's not a terrible person. Share the damn custody. Figure it out.
Well, a judge isn't going to grant him sole custody just because she's going out with her girlfriends.
You don't know what slander or what people are going to say and what proof he's going to have, because these things get so gross, especially with the celebrity ones, that I just, it's just real ick factor for me. And it really hurts me that these kids are being used. But
so anyways, could we go back for a second? Because she's now like the third person that we've heard about being blindsided by. I feel like Jeannie Mai was also blindsided, but Who's the chick off Selling Sunset? The one who was married to the guy?
Yes, she was married to the guy from This Is Us.
Yes.
Trisha or something.
We saw her publicly.
Isn't she like married again? She's married to she's lesbian now. She's married to a chick. Sometimes you think you're straight and then you meet the person you love and they're not a man. And you know what?
I think we've learned, if anything, over the last couple of years, society, people are fluid. Anyways, regardless, but this is my question is that, and we saw Rochelle break down publicly. Like do you remember that episode of Selling Sunset?
No, I never watched the whole thing. I only watched the first few episodes and there was just so much drama already. And I was like, I don't know if I'm mentally prepared for this. And so I stopped.
Yeah, I sound like a junkie here, but I literally just watched it to see what happened.
That makes me so sad.
It was sad. It was
Didn't he text her? He texted her?
No, she read about it in the news.
Oh, no.
He didn't text her at all.
Wow.
She woke up that morning, went to work as if it was like whatever, and
woke up next to him, or were they having
across the news,
or were they having problems?
No problems. Go watch the episode.
Wow.
I'll actually, you know what? I'll find the specific episode and the specific moment for you, so you only have to watch that part.
That's so bad.
She literally says, she's like, I had no idea. I literally was so blindsided. She walked out of the house, did her thing. All of a sudden, she was getting text messages from other people and then news articles being like thrown in her face. She had no idea. None at all.
You know what's crazy about that? I only remember her saying how in love she was. And I remember they did this whole spread on People magazine. Yep. And I was like, okay. And again, man, what I always say about people trying to splash their relationship everywhere. But I know that he ended up with somebody that he worked with before, that they both worked with before. Mm-hmm. So that might have had something to do with it. Maybe he was cheating on her or something. I don't know.
Well, he was with somebody else relatively.
Her name was Sophia or something. I can't remember. But basically they were all on that soap opera together.
Yes. Yeah. Anyways, then going back for a second, Jeannie Mai, mm-hmm. he apparently filed in June or July or something. They were in Vietnam at the time that he had. Sorry, he hadn't filed. Sorry, he hadn't filed. He had done the paperwork, but he hadn't filed until later.
But wasn't Vietnam a trip that they did for their anniversary or something?
She surprised him for their anniversary with that trip.
She did, or her family? Whatever. Who cares? That's messed up. People are thinking about this in their head and pretending everything is okay. Oof. Oof. Meanwhile, on a side note, today is my anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I got married
papers today. I'm going to hurt somebody.
In a courthouse, and then the next day, so tomorrow is when everybody thinks it's my anniversary because I didn't tell anybody.
I love that you guys did that because that's adorable.
I never wanted a big wedding. I wanted it to be private, and then it became a thing. A big wedding? He apparently didn't care, but as we started to plan things, and I was like, I really only want my grandma and my mom and sisters, my two sisters, at my thing. He's like, if you invite your sisters, I have to invite my three sisters and my mom, and she'd want to bring her boyfriend. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And he goes, what about your friends? And I was like, we could do a dinner or something. And then it became like, if you invite your friends, and I have to invite my friends, but they have to fly in. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually a wedding. So it started to snowball. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, we're having a wedding. And he was like, okay. And I was like, all right. We were supposed to go on an African safari that year, like one of those nice, that was my goal. And I was already planning it. I was going with a coworker who lived in California, an older woman, and I loved her. It was her dream trip. And he wanted to come along. And so she ended up inviting her cousin. Obviously, she didn't want to be a third wheel. And I was like, yeah, totally. But we're going to do it nice, $10,000 to $12,000 a person. Yeah. And when he was like, oh, we're doing this. And I was like, oh, man, we're not going to Africa then, because I ain't going into debt for a wedding. Sorry.
No.
It worked out. I'm glad we had it.
I wanted to elope too. Yeah. So much so that I was like, I don't want to be a part of this whole wedding fiasco. And I think you so get lost sometimes in the planning, but I also had a groomzilla.
Yeah, he was very whatever, but at the end of the day, like, he is a traditional person. The evolution of our relationship is, this man's a saint because he just let me do what I wanted to do and waited for me until I was ready for everything possible, including getting engaged. I made the comment one time, I was like, because I never really wanted to get married or anything, but I never was like, oh, I'm never getting, I didn't care. And I was like, I would rather have a house and engagement ring, because if I'm getting an engagement ring, it's going to be a big one. And that means I'd have to get married. And I don't really want to get married. So we ended up getting a house and we lived in this house. We owned this house and we did our thing. And then one day I read this crazy book, which I do not remember the name. And they were married for 20 years, living in Chicago. He cheated on her, impregnated his friend's daughter, blah, blah, blah. Then he was like, yeah, I got to move out, but don't worry, you can keep everything. But then, of course, the baby came and he's like, nah, you got to move out and I need all my back. And I was like, I literally finished that book and I looked at him. I will never forget this moment in the living room. And I was like, we can get engaged whenever you're ready. And he was like, okay, guys, this was like 3-4 years into our relationship.
I'm so confused. A book made you, but the book wasn't even a good love story.
The people in the book, they weren't married. They thought they were married because they were together for a long time. So the girl realized, and she worked hard. She worked with him for everything, but because he needed it and it was in his name, he's like, peace out. And I was like, I got like angry and I looked at him and I was like, my house too. But also there were other things to consider, right? The reason I wanted to get married was because this is the closest person to me. We're going to be together hopefully forever, but I really do feel like it's forever. And if something's wrong with him medically, I need to be in that room. I'm not his girlfriend. We are partners at that point. And I don't want, no offense to any of his family members, but I don't want any of them coming and saying like they're going to make a decision for his life when I'm the one who knows what he wants, what he feels. And they might know what he wants and feels from when he was younger, but I'm the one that lives with him. So I was like, I want that right and privilege to be there and vice versa. Not that anyone in my family would probably step up, but you don't know, people get crazy when things go crazy in your health and and money and your death. And I've seen it. So I was just like, that's important to me. Could I have done a health proxy form? Yes. But then there's other things. The only reason if you're not going to get married, it's a health proxy form and a power of attorney for your assets. That's really what you need. And then know that in America anyway, you don't get your social security from the other person after they pass. So that's pretty much it. But I was like, nah, I've already invested a lot of time with this person and he's my person. Why am I withholding something? Because I'm not, it's not that I wasn't sure. I didn't care. And he seemed to not care, but he also, I think, was just waiting for me to be ready, which was wonderful.
That is nice.
And then the wedding organically happened that way too.
Wow. That's nice.
It was so the wedding. I was not stressed out at all. I was a very chill bride because in my mind, I was like, this is all gravy on top of something I was already going to do, which is go to the courthouse. Cause I always said to myself, if I ever got married, I'm just going to courthouse. Like, why? I don't need a wedding. I don't care about weddings. But my wedding ended up being so wonderful and chill because I didn't care. I hired a florist and he was like, what do you want? I was like, what can this get me? What do you think? Here's what I'm thinking of the colors. I had other people pick the colors. He ended up doing all the arrangements based on, I didn't know what else. I don't know what a peony is. I don't know what a lily is versus I do, but I'm not the expert. You as a florist, you're the expert. You make me beautiful flowers. He seemed like a stand-up guy, family guy, and he did a wonderful job.
Nice.
I had a planner the day of at the venue.
Right.
I made sure the venue had a place for everybody to stay because ain't nobody coming to my house. Because I was like, I don't want my family to come at my house because my family don't leave. They are Caribbean. They will party. And then they will clean up too, but they also don't know where things are. So I want to come back after my wedding weekend, get my stuff and be zen and then leave on a very zen trip. And that's what I did.
Right. Where did you guys go on your honeymoon?
Right after the wedding, we ended up driving up to Maine and doing Portland and doing a vacation town. We stayed in this beautiful old mansion on the water. It was really nice. And then a few months later, we ended up going to New Zealand and Fiji.
Wow. Oh my God.
Not my first choice.
To New Zealand and Fiji.
I loved it. We went to Queenstown. It was wonderful. I really wanted to go to the Galapagos. Fun story, guys. I mentioned the Galapagos about a year before to my cousin who also was getting married that year. And she didn't even know what it was. She couldn't even pronounce it, but she was just working in the travel industry at the time. And she was like, what's that? And I was like, oh, this, what animals? And it's Darwin and blah, blah. And she was like, oh, she didn't really get it. Flash forward a couple months later, her fiance at the time was like, yeah, we're going to the Galapagos, blah, blah, for our honeymoon. I was like, excuse me, say what? I was so angry. Not that we both can't go to the Galapagos, but
didn't even know about it.
She couldn't even pronounce it. I'm like, aren't you in travel? So what ended up happening, this is how manifestation works sometimes. She ended up having a person or a vendor come to their office and speak to them about the Galapagos. And because she showed interest and she was like, oh, whatever, she got a lot of free things, including flights. She can talk to vendors. She got like the best accommodation. So she basically made her whole honeymoon free and went to the Galapagos. Nice. She also did this at the Maldives, however you want to pronounce it.
I'm dying to do the Maldives.
She did this. She went there and then she came back and I was like, oh my God, that was like my dream trip. And I'm so glad you went because I told you to go there. How was it? She goes, it was boring. And I was like, so you staying in the best on the water suite, like all these things. She goes, yeah, but it was not much to do other than that. And I was like, yeah, you're too young for these trips that I'm telling you that I want to do because I'm 10 years older than her. So anyway, so the Galapagos didn't happen for me. And I was very angry about it, mainly because she refused to admit that I mentioned it. She kept saying, no, you never talked about it, blah, blah. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I kept pushing it. And then one day I got really mad at her. And I said, you know what? Put your fiance on the phone. Put him on the phone because we're going to settle this right now. And she goes, no, why? And I was like, because he is such a good person. He probably doesn't even know where you got that idea from. Put him on the phone. So I pushed her and she goes, finally, she was like, fine, you mentioned it, but it's not like you booked it first. And I was like, and there it is. And that's all I needed to know. Thank you. Have fun at the Galapagos. We were like sisters. We're like sisters. 10 years older I am.
It happens. It happens.
I wasn't really angry. I was just more like, that was where I wanted to go for my honeymoon. And I wanted to have this wonderful experience. I'm not going to go do it after you and compare notes. So I had a wonderful trip. We went to Fiji and New Zealand.
Yeah, so. Fiji is beautiful. I'm dying to do Fiji.
Fiji wouldn't even freaking let us in because my husband's passport at the time was 5 months from expiration and they were very steadfast on that 6-month rule. And I got mad at him. Very. And then we're sitting in the airport and I was like, he was like, we can go to Australia. I'm like, I lived in Australia. We're not going to Australia for my honeymoon where I live. No. And I was like, I would rather fly back to New York and do another trip to make up for this trip, even though we had a wonderful time in New Zealand. And he was just like, I don't know. And I was like, I told you to check yours before. He's American, so he doesn't think like people really.
No, I know.
It's not expired. Anyway, I will say, not that I'm propping anybody. We're not getting sponsored for this, guys, but I use a travel agent from Zacasso Travel, Zacasso.com with a Z. And I didn't really care for him. I didn't really want to really work with him much, but I did. And he did everything for me because I was so busy at work. And this trip was just such a big trip. And I just didn't want to take the time out to plan it, especially after the wedding and everything. And I emailed him while I was at the airport about the situation. And let me tell you what this person did. You'll never guess what he did. And this is how we ended up going to Fiji.
What did he do?
Contacted the embassy in Washington, D.C. to give my husband special permission to enter Fiji. All within, and you know how you always go to the airport early? They make you go early just in case. So we were there like 3 hours early. And somebody had taken our car. This Japanese couple had taken our car. And then we ended up in this taxi with shaggy thing, whatever. We had this luxury trip and we get to the airport and this happened. And I was very upset. And then when he emailed and he was like, here, you can use this letter and they will let you in. And I was like, shut the front door. Go up to the counter again. And sure, they're like, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Hardin, this is fine. And I was like, oh my God, are we going to get through customs with all of this? So we did. Special permission from the ambassador for Fiji Islands in Washington, D.C. I would never have fathomed or thought of even doing that.
But he must have ran into this before. He must
maybe,
have run into this before.
But that's why you have a travel.
But even still,
an experienced travel person. I really didn't care for him. I didn't think about him. I was like, here's my budget. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I don't want to do. Done. Leave me alone. Because I was one of those people that were like, oh, I know you get kickbacks and you probably take part of my money as commission, but that's their job, right? But I was used to planning everything we did from the bottom to the top, like top to bottom, like every detail. I don't mind doing it. But after that trip, I was like, wow, any big trips we're going to take from now on that includes just not me and you, I'm using a travel agent. And I have used Zacasso again. We did a family trip to Italy last year to Positano. And then we did a lot of stops on the way back up to Rome because we had a wedding in this town called Bracciano, which was north of Rome. Long story short, there was a lot of moving pieces. We were there for over a week and it was about 6 to 7 of us in my family, 7 of us, including my child. And I was like, I'm not traveling with my child to the south of Italy without having everything set and done for me, including where we're staying, everything. Like everything needs to be good and nice. And I need my kid to be safe. Yeah. And that was that. And so they were wonderful.
Wow. Ooh, so nice.
If it was just you and your boo, go do your thing because you figure it
first of
out.
all, I
Yeah.
spent years as an executive assistant planning out their trips for other people that I refuse to plan. I've always used either a travel agent. The only time I didn't use a travel agent was when my ex-husband planned our honeymoon, which was dumb because I basically planned it for him.
I told my husband, I did this wedding. You can plan our trip right after. And I want to go to Maine. And here's my only criteria for Maine because it was in September and I wanted to see really beautiful foliage going up in New England. I said, I want to sit in Adirondack chairs having a whiskey with a sweatshirt on or a coat. And I want to be cozy at a fireplace. That was my one thing.
That's adorable.
That was my one thing. And I was like, when I think of Maine in the fall, which I've never been to Maine, I know it's very much a cold place. I was like, I know there's a city and then there's other parts to it, but I want to have that moment. And so he did. We stayed at this beautiful hotel outside of Portland, the first part of the trip. And then it was on the close to the water. And it was a hotel though, and you came out, we were on the first floor, so you could step out and they had this huge expansive lawn that had little pockets of moments where you can sit on Adirondack chairs and have your drink. And they had a bonfire, and it was very exactly what I wanted. So he hit it. That was my one criteria and he did it. So.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I did Maine this summer. Maine is a beautiful state. Very beautiful.
Where did you go in Maine?
Girl, we did a lot of like back road stuff. We didn't even do the big cities. It was a impromptu road trip and we just did a bunch of back road stuff. This was literally, I think, 2 weeks before we connected, which feels very like aligned at the moment for me that we're talking about Maine, because it literally happened. Like I had just gotten back from that trip and I was thinking, okay, like my podcast, where are we at? And I think you and I had just connected.
Look at us.
It's so funny.
The vacation town I went to, which the name escapes me right now, I loved it. And I was like, we need to go here. It was like after the summer crowds. And I have still wanted to go back to that town forever. I even say with our kid, let's take them. Let's go this summer. Let's do it. Everybody wants to go to Cape Cod and Nantucket or whatever. No, I want to go to Bal Harbor. I want to go to Bal Harbor, Maine.
Oh, cute.
It was so cute. And we bought like artwork. Girl, we were fixing our house. I was like, throughout the years, I would buy artwork everywhere we went, Italy, France, whatever, like artists I would find on the street doing oil painting, because I'm partial to oil paintings. And we would put them in different parts of the house. And so when we were in Maine, I was like, I want this here. And so our house is full now, but I'm a big experience collector. I'm an experience collector.
Amazing. I love that.
That's a good way to end this. It was really nice speaking to you all week, every day. We'll do it again next week. So stay tuned, guys. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. And if you are on TikTok and Instagram, because who isn't, you need to follow us. You need to see our clips and you need to support us. So yeah, so Min and Meera is out. Have a good weekend, guys.